On this day, I took to the streets of Sydney to capture some afternoon sun using my new Sony f1.4 50mm lens, paired with my Sony a7 IV. The afternoon sun in Sydney is still very strong and comes quite early in the day, with sunset scheduled for around 5:30. I started my walk from Central Station and I had about an hour to capture the city before moving into Blue Hour. This time, avoiding George Street, I headed towards Ultimo and the Haymarket building, which I knew had some amazing afternoon light. It didn't take long for me to look across the road and see this warm sunlight hitting against a noodle restaurant as a customer was looking at the menu in the doorway. I like this image because I find that the afternoon light gives us a sense of time with the day winding down. The customer is nicely framed in the doorway and the building itself has a nice shape to it, being flat facing towards me, but then the other wall on a diagonal pulling away from the sidewalk. The tree is imposing, unfortunately, but it also gives a frame towards the door. I think if I was maybe 15 minutes earlier, the tree could have had some sun on it, which really would have been nicer. Now, not long after this image, I came to the light rail tracks that are just down in Ultimo near the Haymarket building. And as I expected, the sunlight was incredible. The setting sun stretching across that entire light rail street. And so I took my first shot. Now, my first test shot isn't that bad. However, it's very busy, very muddied. I like all the people walking through the space, but at the end of the day, it's not the best image, but a good test shot. So I then had to recompose. I took a few steps back, I got a little bit lower, and what I tried to do was include the building to the side, the UTS building, which actually showed where the shadow was being cast from. And the really nice thing about that is you can see it actually cut the image into a colder tone side and a much warmer tone side. And so that gave me a lot of contrast to play with. From here, I pretty much just had to wait for my subject. My first subject was this Uber Eats delivery rider, and the thing I like the most about him is his blue helmet. It stands out in the warmer tones, but because it's such a vibrant blue, it actually doesn't fall away into the cold tones of the shadows. Now his yellow bag also adds a nice pop of color, and on top of that, the afternoon light honestly is doing most of the magic here. In the second image, I waited for a different person to ride through, ideally someone that I believe to be a bit more local. And I'm pretty happy that I got that because the light that comes off of the gentleman's hair on the bike is just so pleasing to look at. And overall, I think this image I got pretty lucky with because I have three distinct people in the photo taking up their own section. We have the most prominent subject, which is our cyclist with the light hitting him and his hair illuminated. But then center frame, we actually have a woman walking towards us between the light pole and the brick building of the UTS. And then to the left, we've actually got another person who's walking away from the frame through the actual archway. So they're framed really nice too. In a perfect world, if I could shift this, I'd probably have the gentleman walking through the archway on the left, further in already being hit by the light. I'd have the woman closer to me, still framed by the pole in the brick building, but now the main subject, and then keeping our cyclist where he is, still illuminated, but as a bit more of a supporting character. But such is the nature of street photography. Finally, in this area, I think I got what is probably the best composition for what I currently had at the time. And even though the people in the background actually muddy up the photo, but the subject of the girl is centered and she's walking with a nice wide open gait, and I think just looks really good with the light hitting the back of her as well, it is muddied with the people in the background. But overall, I took a few steps back, and what that allowed was, if you look at the top of the photo, we've actually got more of the tree in the space, and then the building far in the back actually gets a little bit more breathing room in the sky. And I think that then kind of widens up that shot a bit, and it actually makes it feel a bit more balanced and pleasing rather than what was a little bit maybe too tight in the last few images. So overall, I think that composition and that framing was really nice, but then waiting for the right subject and cleanness and background people. And I think that is where I could improve, a bit more patience there. I couldn't leave this place without using the archway of the UTS building to frame some subjects. The first image shows just how light can really set a scene, and I think it was a good example of framing. The second image here I like more, as we can see just as the man's shadow is being stretched beyond the frame and joining into the setting sun. Here's the thing, spending a lot of time in a location that has really good lighting is going to produce really good photos. Golden hour is just such a great time to take photos because the light itself, it's warm, but it's soft on people's faces, and there's so much contrast that you can play with because the shadows are quite harsh, but also very cold. And so you get this really nice color contrast on top of the fact that the light itself is already doing so much work. So when you find a spot and you really like it, work it until you're done. Really enjoy that space. And I think that's what I did here. Most of this walk was here in this space. And if you're enjoying this video so far, look, a like goes really far, further than you think. And you know what, a comment, it actually shows me what you think. So either one would be great. I'd love for the support, but let's keep going. The image here of the worker finishing his day was taken just like a fraction of a second too early, and it just cuts off his foot, unfortunately. But I really wanted to include it because I think this photo really shows that feeling of, you know, ending the day that I'm sure we've all had after a really long day, and you're just walking home, you know that it's all winding down. And I just think it's a pleasing image. I probably could have cropped it to cut off and make it look more intentional, make it look more closer. But I also wanted to really just show that sometimes street photography, you're reacting to what's happening around you, and you're not always going to get the exact composition that you want, especially because sometimes it is very reactive. Haymarket is currently going through some renovations or restorations on the outside of the building. So for this image, usually you get a nice contrast of the cold alleyway and the bright red sign at the end. However, with the scaffolding, the warmth is cut down a bit, but thanks to the sunset, it doesn't detract too much. I like this image because of the cool and warm tones it produces, with the subject resting off to the side, a little further away, the walker heading down into the light. It doesn't feel like a busy city, but more like a small nook where people can actually rest away from those traveling home. Now look, this image I took as a reminder that just because there's no apparent subject doesn't mean that the image or the location is worth ignoring. Yes, at the end of the day, it would be nicer if I had maybe someone in bright colors, like someone who's exercising and going for a run in their afternoon, who's running through the frame, or a worker packing up for the day. But that didn't really happen on the walk, and it was quite empty at this time. However, the lighting is really nice, the framing is really nice, and it just reminds me that I can come back here at another time and try again. And so I like having those images when I'm editing to remind myself of those locations, and then I save them, and it's just something that I think is really important, you know? If you like something, still take a photo of it, even if it doesn't quite have what you need.
So this shot, I am lining it up, waiting for this person to walk through. The crossing really gives the leading line. A little bit of wall here for separation. And I just like that there's a bit of greenery on the side there, as well as the bike for a bit of color. I think it's something nice, but right now this is too many people. But the first shot, I think, came out very good. We're in focus. Taking time to compose this shot. I'm waiting for the right person or people to come through, but it's not a very walking track down there. So I think I got lucky, but the idea was to use this crosswalk as my leading line and just to add a little bit of depth in the foreground using this wall. I think it came out nice. There's another person coming. This might be another opportunity. I might get a bit closer to the wall and Wait for them to walk along. Just get them in focus, start tracking. About midway, wait for the car to go. It's nice. Plus also trying to get the gate. As you can see, here it looks like they've actually stopped. But I think walking wise, it's always nice to have motion, which is catching the separation of the legs.
Now, sunset was really starting to come to an end here, and I walked by a pretty well-known motorcycle parking area in Sydney, and I snapped this photo. And look, I was feeling a little uninspired at this point as I was losing the light, and it's not a bad photo. The 50mm does a great job here with the foreground blur. It's a clean shot. I think overall it looks nice, but again, there's no real true subject and no real meaning behind this photo. So the colors are nice, but I probably should have waited for someone to come and get their bike. But when you're losing light, you're starting to feel that pressure that you have to take photos or you have to move on. So it's very interesting with that sense of street photography where it's go, 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 but you also need to learn when to wait, wait, wait. With blue hour setting in, finding compositions and photos became harder, but I took a moment to slow down my shutter speed to capture some cars moving by so I could show the busy city roads, and I just happened to find that the W Hotel building windows had this beautiful reflection of those last colors in the sky. The bridge provided a nice open backdrop with plenty of movement from people. I think this image is a very clean shot with my 50 again showing how it can provide a clean shot and a nice soft bokeh in the background. I like that I lined up the shot with the Sofitel building in the background as my subject, the woman, walked into frame. The guardrails of the bridge don't quite add the leading lines effect I was hoping for, but they do help guide the eye to the middle section of the image, which then leads to the woman who is centered. This is shown again in this example of the cyclist, also framed in a similar fashion, but this time with less of the guardrail, so now it works as a foreground blur. I also like that in the top right, it has this circular roofing added into it, which is something a little extra to the image. The cyclist had a nice contrasting helmet that stood out from the dark shadows in the blue sky, it's being a very nice white and red. This image of the woman heading down the staircase was a quick capture with no planning, just feeling the movement of everyone. I turned around and at first I tried to shoot over the guardrail, but quickly placed my camera low to shoot through the fence, which resulted in some really nice framing. The only downside of this image, I feel really, is that the shadow that casts directly on her is from the same fence that I used to frame her with. Finally, as the walk was coming to an end, I actually positioned myself on the other end of an escalator where I'd shoot through the glass at subjects who were headed downstairs. And what this actually created was, with the escalator, these easily enough beautiful leading lines heading straight to the subject for the viewer. We got the nice blue hour colors, so we have the nice cold tones in the foreground, and then off to the back you can see in the sky the last remaining parts of that sunset. And luckily, because of the glass side walls, they actually create this beautiful reflection of the subjects as well. And I think the images that I took here right at the end were honestly some of my favorite of the actual day itself. And so, you know, never give up when the light starts to go down, just keep looking all the way till the end. If you enjoyed the video, comment down below, let me know your favorite photo, give me some tips because I always want to improve, and most importantly, go out and shoot because it's so much fun. And look, I'll see you in the next one.